Hey everyone, how's everyone at Rev Tech doing? I'm Will Allred. I'm one of the co-founders here at Lavender. It's a sales coach that helps sales teams write better emails. We help them do it faster. Today, the plan is to go through with my colleague Dorothy here and talk about how you as managers can really start to level up your outbound, how you can be coaching better to the data that exists within your team's inboxes, and if there's a little bit of time, we're going to go through a couple exercises that I like to give to teams. Worst case, I'll drop the slides for everyone who attends so that y'all can enjoy. But with that, quick intros on ourselves. As I mentioned, I'm one of the co-founders here at Lavender. I talk a lot about writing cold emails. If you follow me on LinkedIn, I share a lot of the data that comes from Lavender. We see millions of emails every single week, working with over 20,000 active sellers. And with that, we see a lot of email data. Now, I'm joined here by Dorothy Huynh from our sales org. Dorothy, you want to give a quick intro?
Yeah, well, it's good, everyone. I'm Dorothy. I am from the sales team at Lavender. I what? Well, I guess I've been one of those 20,000 users, been a big user of the product for the past 2 years, and I would say it's a big contribution to me growing as a seller. Went from an SDR to AE, and now I get to help implement and sell Lavender to teams.
It's awesome. So, as I mentioned, our goal today, right, is to help you help your sales team become better writers. And so part of that is showcasing a little bit of what we do at Lavender, but really our focus and our hope here is to show you some of the things that we're seeing within outbound sales orgs, but also walk you through some of the things that are really holding teams back from accomplishing those double-digit reply rates, 20% plus reply rates. We'll show you a bit of what we're doing to help with that as well, not just from a process standpoint, but from a tech standpoint, um, and give you guys some tools to level up. So, Dorothy, you've put together this really cool maturity curve for sales orgs. Would love to, I'm going to share my screen, but would love to have you just walk us through it real quick because um, when I first saw this, I was like, yeah, how did you put this together?
Well, I'm weird. I like data. I like slides and I like graphs. So put it all together, and it's derived from me and this team. We've been working with thousands of sales teams, and what we've been able to identify is four distinct stages or styles of outbound, um, and the core differences between each of them in terms of the complexity and maturity of how sophisticated that process is.
Interesting. So if I'm watching this, I might get a little wrapped up in the reply rates. And I think it's interesting when I look across our user base, the average reply rate is like 20.45%, which is above stage four. Curious, is that just like are these like relative curves that you typically see when you're starting to talk to folks?
I think it's a place that you could be, but I tend to see that people kind of walk through these stages, and sometimes you can skip stages just depending on how fast you learn and pick up what environment and kind of learning opportunities you have.
Okay, so walk me through this because like if I'm watching this, I'm curious. Like what means like what's a stage one and like let's evolve all the way from little amoebas to you know intelligent big brain Homo sapiens here in stage four. What's stage one looking like?
Yeah, so stage one, maybe like our baby wizard crawl stage here, right? We're really focused on getting in the reps. It's probably more focused on speed, quantity, hitting those KPIs, and so it tends to be leaning towards sequences only. It's easier. We're automated,
Mhm.
and the messaging is often geared around brand awareness or features. Um, right, you don't have to think too much about anything else. It's just put it in the sequence. Not much personalization.
Yeah, I see a lot of folks when like I think about that, right? It's like that sort of how can we scale it mentality. Are you finding you're saying a little to no personalization here, but really it's like it's mostly just like how do I hit my numbers?
Yeah, yeah.
What do you think's like the big blocker between stage one? I guess well first, what is stage two? Then we'll get into like what's the big blocker keeping stage one from becoming stage two. But what's stage two? Let's talk about that one.
Yeah, I think for stage two, we're getting a little clearer on our persona in our industry and the messaging around that. So we start to build that into the sequence, and we realize that, hey, maybe we should try this personalization thing, call a couple things out from LinkedIn. So 25% of that email is, or the first line of that email is personalized. And maybe a couple one-off engagements where we reach out based on them opening up a lot of email, opening the email several times, or following up on like a close lost or something like that.
Yeah, I'm curious, like adding that personalization. It seems like that's the big. Well, I guess there's a couple things, right? You're starting to do a little segmentation, breaking
Yeah.
up persona, and then the personalization piece. What are some of the big gaps from stage one companies to stage two companies? Is it like rev ops coming in and helping with some of that list segmentation for the reps? What are you seeing that are like core differences there?
Yeah, I think it's when marketing gets involved. Sorry, no hate to y'all. But it often tends to be the case where there's a lot more marketing involvement, right? And so that's why stage one is more of the messaging geared towards brand awareness or features. Um, and then we have a little bit more segmentation in stage two, marketing still writing out those um, sequences.
Nice. Yeah, and it's kind of funny. Like I've personally seen a few teams in like stage two, and like it's not to say that you're going to be trapped at like a 3 to 5% reply rate. I've seen some teams that are getting in like the mid-teens at this stage, and like there's a lot you can do just by like tweaking a few things within your email writing to like get that, which we'll get to. But yeah, it sounds like stage two, you're starting to have like a bit more of a well-oiled machine. And then stage three, you kind of start to get a little bit more tricky. There's like a lot more intricacies here.
Yeah. I mean, at stage two, when you start adding that personalization in, you're starting to align with persona and industry, right? There's a little bit more relevancy, and people then ask, like, whoa, how do we like do this at scale? Because it starts to bring in more quality ops, quality stage ones, right, to stage two opportunities. And so we realize then um, becoming closer aligned with account messaging, identifying specific triggers. And I know at Lavender, we like to look at like two, three triggers, not just one trigger that we can align with to call out in our messaging. Um,
For those
and we're,
watching, what's a good example of a trigger? Like if we're reaching out to somebody, what's a good trigger for us?
yeah, so a few triggers could be first 90 days leadership change. Second, we're
Mhm.
also seeing that they're hiring. Three, they also use a platform that we integrate with. I can call all three of those out, and it's just like, whoa, you know my world too well.
That's perfect. So then, one of the things I find really interesting too, as you're evolving through these like stages, is like the traditional funnel of like I don't know, I can't really do it sideways on Zoom, but like traditional funnel of like it being a pyramid, right? Or more like a, I guess, a funnel,
Yeah.
right? Might flip that. It becomes much more shaped like a pipe because you're getting much more qualified conversations coming in and you're not spinning your wheels on, the wrong types of people.
Yeah. And I kind of think that's one of the issues often seen as stage two is when we only focus on persona and we don't segment between above the line or below the line buyers. Uh, right? You're just going to be dumping everybody from VP, director, manager, specialist into that persona sequence. But now, when we start to segment that messaging between what the above the line buyer cares about versus what the below the line buyer cares about, then we're talking about narrowing it down and really aligning with initiatives and day to day things that matters to them.
Now, in stage three, how much of that above and below is getting personalized? Are you finding it like it varies and that's one of the big drivers for what's working versus not? Or is that like a core difference between three and four?
I would say yeah, there should be variance between above the line and below the line, right? They are thinking about two different things. Below the line folks care about their day to day. Above the line folks want to know how to get to hit those initiatives um, and projects that they have on hand, and how does your solution solve for that? So once you begin getting into stage four,
I was gonna say everybody is watching, they're like, I want those 20+% reply rates. So like what's that stage four starting to look like?
yeah, well, it really starts to come down to account prioritization at this point. Although we could have done that as well, tiering in the earlier stages to help boost some of those reply rates, right? It's continuous segmentation to get you clear on when that buyer is ready, um, how well you know the lay of the land of that company, and where they want to be, what their problems are. And that takes a little bit, well, not a little bit, but a lot more research, a lot more disco um, to get in the door there.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that because like, yeah, I think one of the core things that's happening across the entire maturity curve is the amount of research involved from stage one to stage four. It's almost exponential. Um, as you're thinking about it sounds like the research element is like one of the core differentiators. Segmentation sounds like one of the core differentiators, which I know I harp on when it comes to like speeding up that process for doing outbound. It's a lot easier to reach out to a much more segmented list than it is to just a broad audience and then like try to narrow it down. Um, do you find particular like tech tools are existing at certain stages? I mean, one of the things that I would immediately think of is like probably stage four is when you're starting to like prioritize with intent data.
Yeah, I say 3 and 4, a lot more intent data, product data. If you've got any, you definitely should have like a gong, maybe a lavender. Yeah,
Yeah.
things that can give you the edge on doing your job better.
Yeah. And so as a company is starting to plan out accounts and like starting to move into this like very different world, I think some things to take away, right? Are segmentation is going to free a lot of time up for your sellers. Um, you can do things like segmenting based off of technographics. As Dorothy alluded to, is like one of the things that we would use as a trigger for why we'd reach out. And so if that information's not present versus is present, that really helps us like narrow our field of vision for how we're going to reach out to that person. The other piece is mapping out the account. Dorothy, one of the things that I immediately thought of as you were talking about mapping out the account is how are our managers thinking about, at least best in class managers that you're talking with, how are they thinking about like persona, role, and like mapping those accounts out for the reps so that they can understand that a little bit better.
Think that's like a whole team, not just a manager thing, but it
Yeah.
comes down to enablement, managers, AEs, SDRs being aligned all together to map out that account, and have alignment across the, even honestly, you should have your whole organization, marketing, rev ops, all involved on these CS. Like they, especially your CS team, like they know your customers like the back of their hands and can give you some key language, key insights, um, on those.
Yeah. Um, so one of the things that immediately jumps to my mind as well is like, say you're using like a sales loft or an outreach, and you're like trying to organize your outbound to those different groupings. How might you um, would you just have like nomenclature for each um, like would you have nomenclature for like each persona within the org based off of them being above or below the line? How does that how do you think that like shakes out? I'm just trying to get people some good tactics.
Yeah, a common thing that hear from people is like, "Whoa, we have like 1,000 to 2,000 sequences or cadences within our instance," and I think the way that we're looking at them is kind of an issue, right? Because when we think about sequences and cadences, we're building out workflows. So, do we call first, email, LinkedIn? That's how you want to build out your sequences,
Yeah.
um, based on that workflow. But when it comes to messaging, I would encourage, right after you build the cadence or the sequence workflow, build templates, A/B test those, build snippets, A/B test those. That way you're not inundated with like 1,000+ sequences in your, um, SCP. And then you can actually track the data, build libraries with templates and snippets, and have them more organized.
Yeah, I think that's huge for folks because like the amount of times people come to us and they're like, we've got X thousand sequences, and like fortunately we can come in like benchmark what's working and like help them clean it up. But I think as folks are starting to move up that maturity curve, you brought up something really uh powerful that I think a lot of folks have forgotten, which is cadences, sequences, whatever you call them. It's a workflow tool more than anything. It's not a tool for spraying and praying like we view it in stage one. It's much more about the flow of how we're going to go to market, not necessarily the like automation aspect of that. Everyone kind of has
Yeah.
automation at this point in time, and so it's no longer that differentiator that it once was.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it.
Um, so we have these reply rates up here, and I think one of the things that is a bragging point for us is the fact that across the tens of thousands of users on our tool, the average response rate across millions of emails is 20% plus. And so it seems to be regardless of the stage that someone's at, we figured out really how to like get the most juice out of the squeeze when it comes to outbound. And one of the things that I think is like the key to that is how we analyze that messaging. And so I wanted to showcase that really quickly. You'll find that as you write emails, as we learn more, there's more that you can gain from it. But these monumental leaps and reply rates that Dorothy is showcasing, a lot of that comes from process. And that's why we wanted to show that to y'all to make sure that you're getting the most out of like how you're approaching go to market and like seeing that there's other options out there. But this is really like where we shine and how we can help you get the most out of whatever stage you're at. So the key to this we are aggregated up into a very simple score. So we take all of these different scoring metrics and we pull them together to understand what works best for you. We give you visibility on like how many of those emails are being sent. So like usually the curve doesn't look this nice and up to the right. It's usually more of like a ugly down into the right. Obviously we use our own tool across the team, sitting at a 34% reply rate. The things that like are going to drive those response rates, like we're going to pull those out so that you can dig into them. So one that I love to call out is let's pull it up. I'll use word count, because word count is a classic problem that I see in a ton of emails, and that is a lot of emails are way too long. A lot of emails are sitting somewhere over here. If you're organizing your outreach setup, you're organizing your sales loft setup, as Dorothy talked about, right? You can dig into your templates here. You can see exactly what's driving those. You can organize and filter to get to what's working well. But like the key is like you can immediately go and take action on data like this. So as your team is in their inbox or you're writing emails, you'll have the ability to take action on this. And so there's a couple pieces that I want to call out. One is that score aspect, right? As you're writing those emails, we're bringing that to the forefront and we're showcasing exactly how you can go in and fix those things. But also making personalization really easy for that individual as they're in that moment. And so like with that, we're helping speed up that process. So if you're in that stage one and you're trying to get to a place where you're really like getting that personalized messaging out the door, we can help speed up that process. So just a few notes on really like how we're helping bring that into that, bring that to life within your outbound. Dorothy, any quick notes on this and how like the two things really tie together for managers?
In terms of the personalization system, the email
Yeah,
systems.
I think one of the things that I always tell teams is like helping build process around personalization, and like knowing the persona they're reaching out to. Like, so for Kyle, having like a designated, I know what I'm looking for, how I'm going to use it. Um, but like the other thing that I immediately thought of is like setting up themes and like things to go practice with the sales org. Things like related to word count, right? It's like, okay, we know word count is having a huge impact on response rate. We want to go focus on this because most of our emails are over here. And it's like, okay, let's go tackle that. I'm curious, like, um, how have you seen some folks in this world like tackle different challenges that are coming out of their email data?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of your tweet it or delete it phrase. If you can't tweet it, delete it, right?
Yeah.
Right. We're seeing that 25 to 50 words is the ideal place to be for an outbound email that
Yeah.
gets replies. Yeah, like you said, the data is showing that a lot of teams are writing in the 100, 250, 8 paragraph essay kind of things. Um, and so, if you can't tweet it, delete it. I also recommend reading over your email. One of the things I often see is that there's so much redundancy in what we're saying. Um, and the more concise we can be with our words, the more confident and knowledgeable that we come off. And it's a difference between like rambling on versus, hey, this is what's up.
Yep. I love that. Um, yeah, and for those of y'all who are here, we'll share these slides out. So you have them. So it's like 65-ish slides of email writing exercises, literally based off of millions of emails worth of data. And it's like these are probably issues within y'all's writing process. We've got a few exercises in here as well that'll help you break into that next tier, doing things like building out personalization processes. That's a huge one when it comes to finding a little bit more volume out of that personalization. Um, so I'll include these. So don't fret if you're like, oh wait, go back to XYZ slide. We're coming up on time, so I wanted to make sure I said, yeah, Dorothy, thank you for joining me to go through this with team. I think a lot of folks are probably thinking about where they sit on that maturity curve. If they have questions, where should they go? Should they just reach out to you on LinkedIn? Is there an email address? What's best for them to get a hold of you?
I would say try Lavender first. Plug in your outreach sales loft data. Start writing emails. That way you can have your own benchmark, right? A common question I get is like, is this just like general data or is this personalized to me? And the nice thing about Lavender is that we can learn about you and give you those clear personalized recommendations. Um, but also reach out to anyone on the team. We're a big give first team, and if you need help with anything, reach out to us. There's me, Josh, Mike on the sales team, Chad, CSM, Megan. We're all here to talk to y'all.
Amazing. Yeah. And yeah, mutually, you can always say hey to me as well. Dorothy should
You are the email guy after all.
Well, I'm learning a ton from working with you. So yeah, be sure to follow Dorothy. Everything she posts is like absolute like knowledge bombs. Um, I'm Will Allred. You can certainly find me on LinkedIn as well. And don't be afraid to reach out to the team. But until next time, really appreciate everybody joining in. And hopefully y'all found this helpful. Thanks.